unit 6b this. Um, so some of the time I'm going to kind of glance over some things. As long as you get this synthetic substitution process, you should be able to do almost the entire test. Then if you remember how to factor, well goodness, you're ready to go. So what I'm doing here, number one, we're just plugging our thing in synthetic substitution style. Our -1 here, we're just going to put it outside. We take our coefficients, all three of these numbers, and line them up. It goes from x squared to x to constant, just our regular number here. So that means we don't need to put any zeros in. First number drops down. That's another mistake I see a lot, is people trying to multiply this by this before. But no, we just want to drop this number down, and now we multiply -1 times -3, and that's the number that's going to move up here to our next line. So negative times negative makes this a +3 here. We're going to add these two together now. You just add or subtract or whatever it is. I know a lot of you have a hard time with the idea that subtraction really is just addition of negative numbers, but it's all the same thing. So a 3 and a 2 here is going to make +5. And again, before we move our next number up here, we've got to multiply that by our -1 out here. So we're going to multiply this guy by our -1. Makes -5. Put those two together, and that is going to be our final answer here of -6. Alright, so this guy, we got f of 2, so I'm going to put my 2 here. -3, +6, -3, -1. Now, this is one of those cases where it's x squared here, but I don't have an x or just a regular number constant. So that's two zeros that I need to add in here as placeholders for what's going on over here. We need those zeros because that makes us multiply a couple more times, which is the only way you're going to get a correct answer out of this. So my -3 is just going to drop down to start, and 2 times -3 makes a -6. Put those together, and that's going to make a 0 here. 2 times 0 is going to make 0. Put those together, and that's -3. 2 times -3 is going to make -6. And putting those together here is a -7. Double that is -14, and now since there's zeros, I'm just going to rewrite the -14. Double it again is -28. -28 is what we're looking for here. So that's it. Right there. From now on, I'm going to kind of just skip over that synthetic substitution process so that we can get a little bit more in the video and you don't have to have so many parts, because I know you really love extra parts, but hopefully we don't have to. Alright, so now since this is division and this is a binomial little factor parenthesis group thing, that's why I'm writing a -2 out here. The only time we change what we're writing here is when we're going in and out of that parenthesis group, or we've got x plus or minus whatever number it is. Whenever this is written, that number is going to change when we write it out here. I got my 0 here because there is a no x in between the x squared and the 3, so it's missing a term, and that's where my 0 is. Alright, so let's do a little synthetic substitution, and bam, there we go. I'm good. Alright, so now where they get the rest of these terms, it's all x squared, x in numbers, so if you just look for these numbers, you should be able to tell that, what is it, b over here is our answer. It's got a 1 in front, -3, 6, and -9. Where they're getting those from is this starts out as an x cubed. So we drop it down 1 power because it's kind of like we have x plus 2 times all of this stuff. So it's like this x got factored out. So that's why it drops down 1 power to an x squared, an x, a no number, and then our remainder is always just put over top of that same x plus 2. And if you were crazy and you multiplied this using some box method, you'd get back up to here. Alright, so is it a 0, yes or no? All that means is if I get 0 here, then I'm going to choose yes. If it's anything but 0 at the end, then I choose no. So again, it's just, can you do some synthetic substitution? And so here we are working all that out, and what did I get right here? Well, that sure ain't 0. And if it ain't 0, it ain't a solution. And ain't a word unless you're doing some math. I'm sure Esmeralda will probably be upset with me. Mister, you can't say ain't. But I did, and I apologize. Alright, so x minus 2 here, this is might as well be a parenthesis group. We're going to change that to a 2. when we go over here and run our synthetic substitution. And I get a 64 down here is what you should get. Are we going to choose yes? No. No, we are not. And I bet if you use the -2, I just feel like it's going to end up working out for you. And you're going to choose yes. Don't use the -2. We got to switch that over. Do not get fooled. Alright, so number 6 here. We got 2 is a 0. What is going to be the rest of our factors and such? So again, we're going to use 2. We're going to do our synthetic substitution. And when we do our synthetic substitution, we see that yes, we get 0 here like we're supposed to. So yes, it is a root, but it told us that. What that also means is that x minus 2 is one of our factors. So if you look at like C does not have x minus 2. So no matter what, we're not choosing that. So everybody else does. So now we got to decide which one of these has the right factors. So if I want to put my x squared here, minus x minus 12. So I got x squared minus x minus 12. Do a little factoring situation. What multiplies to a 12, but subtracts and makes -1. Well, that's hopefully you're thinking, hey, 4 and 3. Go with -4 because this is negative. So -4 times 3 makes -12, and -4 plus 3 makes my -1. So those are my other two factors, and that's looking like, where we go, here we go. I got a plus 3 or minus 4, and that's it. Good to go. Alright, so I got my -2 here. Same exact situation, only now we don't want the factors. We want to actually use those factors to find our actual solutions. So it's just one small. We get the exact same thing going on here. Got our 0, means we did it right. Going to put my x squared plus my 10x plus my 24. So I'm thinking again, what multiplies to 24? But in this case, since everything's positive, it's got to add up to 10. And that sounds like maybe 6 and 4. 4 times 6 makes 24. 4 plus 6 makes 10. So those are my factors, but those are not the actual solutions. Remember, our solutions are always the opposite of these two numbers. So that's going to be a -6 and a -4. And that's looking like B. And if you don't remember why that is the case, if you take the x plus 6 and put it equal to 0, you subtract 6 on both sides, and that's where we get the -6. Or you just remember, just change the sign of the things and move on with your life and the wonderful polynomials that you're dealing with. Alright, these are the easiest questions on the test that somebody is going to miss. It won't be you because you're listening right now and apparently you care at least a little bit. Unlike my boys in 5th period that promised they would listen if I made fun of them, but they won't have made it this far. Alright, so it's got a 9 here, so you're going to choose 9. That's how many answers, how many zeros, how many roots it should have. This one's a 7, so you're going to choose 7. You just pick the degree of the polynomial, which means the biggest power here. Don't look at the 1/3 and get all scared because there's a fraction. Oh my goodness. Alright, the next two easiest questions on the test. Alright, we got the square root of 3 here. The missing root that they're going to be talking about is always going to be just the negative version of that, -√3. Why? Because when we're doing the whole (b plus or minus square root), if I get 3 in here, I've got a positive and a negative. They go together. They've got to both be answer choices. Same thing here when we talk about our I. When we get the square root, that would be plus or minus 5i going on with whatever here and whatever down here. The plus or minus means we're going to get both. Do not try and pick this one with the -1 here. No. Don't pick this one because you think the 1 is separate from the 5i. They're together. You find the plus 5i right here, and you choose that one. It's just the positive version of that. Right. Given all the possible rational zeros. Alright, this is where we're doing plus or minus the constant or the last number there. Anything that multiplies to make it divided by plus or minus anything that makes the first or the front number here. So this one divided by that one. In this case, it's just a 1 there. So that means we're only going to divide by plus or minus 1. So any of this stuff with fractions, that's people screwing up. Don't be that kid. So what numbers multiply to make a 14? Well, there's going to be plus or minus 1 and plus or minus 14, of course. But in the middle, there's plus or minus 2 and plus or minus 7. This guy, he's missing the 14 there. They wrote it in different order to try and confuse you. But A is going to be the way to go. So 1 times 14 and 2 times 7 are what make that. Alright, Alright, this one's going to be a little bit trickier because our back number, plus or minus 1 and plus or minus 3, but our front number has two choices, plus or minus 1 and plus or minus 5. So we're going to have to do a little bit more work. The way this is going to go is 1 over 1 just makes 1, so there's plus or minus 1. 3 over 1 makes 3, so there's plus or minus 3. Now we've got to check over the 5. So I look at 1 over 5 makes plus or minus 1/5, and then 3 over 5 makes plus or minus 3/5. So you find the one that's got all that stuff going on, and is that this one? Yeah, looks good. 1/5, 3/5, 1 and 3. Got them all? Good to go. Alright, multiple. Oh no. Oh no, we've got to do box method not once, but twice. And yes, I know who you kids are that are like, Mister, why do we got to do so many of these? Well, you only got to do it once, and it's something you've done for days in algebra class, so this should be just thought of as, hey, this is nice, easy, free points for me. Notice as I make my factors, we're changing the signs of all these guys because the 0 to the factor in and out of the parenthesis group is always changing signs. They're going to be nice normal numbers. I'm not going to give you one with the I or anything crazy like that. So we get to just pick the first two if you want. Doesn't matter which ones you pick. I'm going to go with the first two because why not? X times x is x squared, and plus my x minus 3x and minus 3. We're going to put our collected like terms here together on the inside. X squared, that's minus 2x. Bam, bam. Now this guy is going to be my last one here. Set up my second box, and I'm going to just magically fill that in for you. Bam, just like that. You want to make sure you're paying attention to your powers, like this guy, x times x squared is the 3. If you want to write your 1 right here to help make sure your powers stay in order, go for it. So our final answer here, we're going to write x cubed. We got to put these two guys together. Negative 5 and negative 2 make negative 7x squared. And these two guys are going to be like terms to go together. That's a plus 7x. And our plus 15 there at the end. These two lonely people have nobody to combine with, and that's sad. And there's our final answer in polynomial form. Alright, using our synthetic division to divide, we got a parenthesis group. That means negative 1 is going to go on the outside here. I'm going to fill in the rest of that on our own. Alright, and there we go. What you want to be careful on here is x to the 4, x squared. It's missing the x cubed term, and I totally just wrote it all out, and I missed that myself. So you've got to make sure you got the 0 here, and make sure you don't mess that up, because you wouldn't want to be like me, now would you? Alright, right in our final answer, we're going to take that power down 1, so it's going to be 3x to the 4 minus 5x to the 3 plus 5x squared minus 3x minus 1. And if you want to write remainder 6, that's cool. If you want to write plus 6 over the x plus 1, oops, that's a 1, that's cool as well, whatever makes you happy. Alright, last problem. Going to go ahead and make my possibility. So these are all of our possible choices. I'm going to pick one, and I'm going to pick a good one because I'm running out of time. And so I just picked one. If you pick one and you don't get 0 here, try again. What this means is I've got x squared plus x minus 6. You're going to be able to factor this one because they're good numbers, and in this case that's going to be an x plus 3 and an x minus 2, which means my solutions are the opposite, negative 3 and positive 2. And since the front is positive, I'm going to have this positive on the right. Go through my 3 intercepts that we've got, these two and that one, and that's good to go. Make some good choices. Good luck on your test, and hopefully this didn't run too long.